dear audience, let me introduce myself. I am Ievgen Koliada, and I'm a PhD student from Faculty of Fishery and Protection of Water at the University of South Bohemia in České Budějovice. I study problems with fish detection in reservoirs, lakes and rivers, and at laboratory of signal and image processing I'm working with environmental monitoring systems and automatic fish detection systems. Also I work with morphological feature measurements. More attention is being paid to the data and artificial intelligence in fishery and aquaculture. So today I'm going to show and explain some basic knowledge and application of this technology at these fields. So it is so popular to use terms like artificial intelligence, machine learning and deep learning, but what are they? How do they relate to each other? So first we need to define clearly what we are talking about when we are mentioning artificial intelligence. In concise definition of this term actually is the effort to automate intellectual task which normally performed by humans. An example of this intellectual task is classification of objects around us. In other words, we give the names and labels for those objects like trees, buildings, people, and so on. In classical programming, we put rules or program with the data and process. During of this process we are getting the answers. But in machine learning actually we did it opposite. We trying to give the ability to machine to think and make the decision, and we do it in the way when we put actually our data in and answers as input to our program, and outcome is rules or models which actually can perform of this task for us. So in general, deep learning method involves a process whose purpose to gain experience from the sample and to support to actually perform this task. Deep learning can be divided in two categories, and first of them is supervised learning and second is unsupervised learning. In supervised learning we put the data as labeled sample and this data presented like pictures of object with output like label, the name of the object. From this data we are acquiring this experience, and so we learning model, and this model, this process also call it training of the model. And when we are getting this model, we can easily put in this model unlabeled photo, and the model can predict with some accuracy the label. And on the slide we see that models give to us the answers. It's actually the duck. In other hand, unsupervised learning, the data presented just like it is. So we have the picture of the object and do know nothing about this. So our model is actually seeking to find some kind of structure in the object and group this object in group accordingly. And on the slide we can see that model can predict two groups like ducks and no ducks at all. So the goal of creating actually learning model, it is to construct some kind of mapping rules which actually go from input of data to the output. And on this slide we can see the learning models with so-called 4 layers, and in fact these layers is just filters which we applied to our input photo of fish, and we can see that we just present the photo with that filters. And first layers we have filter of pixels, so each layers present the colors of pixel. On the second layer we are looking for edges like some bottom and or water column or edges between fish and waters, and later we're looking more in details. So we are more concerning what kind of corners and counters of object do we have. And the last layer which we have, it's actually layers we are looking in even more in details, and it means that we, for example, looking for the finding the tails, head or eyes on the object. In the end we are getting actually our label or class, and in this case it's fish with 98% of accuracy. And when we have inside this model more than one layer, it's called deep learning models, and actually it's why it's actually deep, because we applying several filters to input data, and like more closer like in microscopy. And of course all these filters, in this case it's pixel, edges and object parts, called patterns of the objects which used for building this map. So during several decades of investing in developing artificial methods, a lot of models was presented, and inspired by human brains and system, all of them actually was united under the term of neural networks. And on the slide you can see the models which has advantages and disadvantages, and the most used and actually in the field. And you don't be afraid actually like how they look, because they are very well described. In fact you don't need to know how they built and constructed. You just use them like a tools. So that's it. So we also should answer the question why deep learning and why now. Actually it's because the field of artificial intelligence is guided by experimental data and findings rather than theory. The machine learning, it's actually not the math of physics, when you can build some ideas in theory and prove them with pen and piece of paper. In fact, it's engineering science, and engineering science, when you're doing engineering, you need actually working place, you need tools, and you need materials which you are going to work. And during this several decades, we have huge jump from in industry of the computer science. Our tools in the machine learning, it's our machines, it's computers, PC, laptops, and also some cloud solution when we put our data somewhere on the server. And in fact, nowadays even smartphones, it's very powerful hardware which can be used in machine learning. So our hardware, it is our tools, but for you need some kind of workspace or workshop, and this workshop, it's actually our programming language, and it's like environmental, which also was developed and slightly separate, but in the end we have like good implementation of all machine technique in different programming language, and you also need in engineering some kind of algorithm and procedure how to work with something, and it's stored, it's so-called top frameworks. And my recommendation, actually, if you want to touch and start to learning, you better to pick the Python programming language and use TensorFlow framework. They are very well described, and they are adapted to, let's say, even for the kids. So it's not so difficult. You can use it and learn a lot. So let's look where we are using actually artificial intelligence in fishery and aquaculture. The most popular fields, it is actually fish identification and species classification. We also do some kind of size and weight estimation with artificial intelligence. We actually quite interesting to look on feeding device, because actually the food is the main source of actually main not source, it's actually main factor which cost a lot. So you need to save it and feed it smartly, and for this we are using some different smart feeding device. Also we can install a different sensor on the drones, and they will be automatically fly to the spot and measure water quality, for example like temperature or oxygen concentration. So it's very interesting. Another field, it's actually to look how fish can interact with robots, because we affecting somehow environmental where they live. So on this picture you can see where some scientists put the prototype in the water and studying the interaction between them. So it's actually the main fields where it's using. And now I want to go slightly more where actually we are using it at Institute of Hydrobiology and in Institute of Complex System at Novi Grade. It's a fish identification. So you want to know how change the size of the fish during the growth or life period, and for this you need to identify the fish. It exists some marking methods, so put some kind of marks on fish or some device that you know what fish it is. But nowadays it's more popular just take the picture of the fish. And on the skin of the fish we have the dots, actually, which somehow like fingerprint at the humans, so they are not changing so much during the life. And with our trained models we can easily detect these dots on the photo and say, okay, it's our fish Alex, we know him quite good. So yeah, it's the fish identification. And another huge field, it's how I mentioned, it's species classification. And why it's so important? During the field works and investigation of the fish fauna at the water bodies, we use direct catch and all direct catch methods, and these direct catch methods involve a lot of human power, and they are very actually cost effective. So first you need to put the nets in the water and at the lake, and after you take all the fish, and you need some guy who will be classify them to the fishes. And actually we have quite abundant environmentals. So on the screen you can see photo of the most abundant species in Czech Republic. It's a bleak, roach, perch, bream. Sometimes you also see the rat, and it's many more. But this is the more important. So we trained the model, which actually just take the photo of fish, and it can draw the rectangle around the fish and say this is rat. So we can automate the process of classification very easy. And second step, during this field work, you need classify it, but also you need to measure it. And nowadays most of laboratories, and we not exception, doing it by hand. So we have some kind of plate with a ruler and just looking on it and say the size. We do it with our models differently. So when we define the red rectangle, we can train another model which can be defined the dots on the fish. And on this picture you can see the dots on the nose of the fish, and dots on the end of fish, and dots on the beginning. And when you find the distance from these dots, it's the most important actually measurements. It's the total length and standard length of the fish. And actually we need some kind of reference for this. So for calculation we put the reference 1 Czech crown coin and covered with the black color, so we can easily separate it from the picture and convert it to the length of the fish. Yeah, and so in the aquaculture, it's another stuff where we need to control fish behavior, and how I mentioned fish behavioral, especially fish swimming activity, can be a good indicator of hungriness of the fish. So we can monitoring how fish swim in the fish tank. We can find out how actually fish feels. So we have automatic fish monitoring system in intensive aquaculture. So we have fish tank. No? Okay, I see. So fish actually swim normally in fish tank, and we are recording it to the camera. We illuminate it with the light because camera needs some lights, and we are storing it on the laptop. And from this data we can detect individual fish. We can say the size of the fish and how it's changing with the time. And from from movements of the fish, we trained another model which also can say how fish feel, how I mentioned. Unfortunately, it doesn't work. But anyway, even from the picture, you can see that. Wait, this. Okay, so that normal state it's like this, is like fish separated and don't moving so fast. When we put food, they're chasing to the food so really fast. So water surface become really reflective, and it's difficult to separate the fish. So systems can actually automatically know that fish is eating right now. And when we have stress, fish really do the really quick jump and stop swimming. So it's like you know, if you saw something on the street, you are jumping and stopping, and fish do the same, and we can measure it. Sorry for the technical problem, because it is not working. In this case, it will be seen much more better. And in conclusion, I want to say actually, so even the artificial intelligence tools are very developed, it's still not complete automatic, and it has huge disadvantages which actually we are suffering. It's first of them, it's for training of your models you need really a lot of data, and it's not like rubbish pictures or I don't know, endless movies. It should be movies which label it and showing what exactly going on, and only after and it's time consuming. You need the person who look through all video and put the labels what is going on, and it's difficult. So actually nowadays we are trying to create these data sets which can be used for these purposes. And of course, it's very expensive. We do it in the laboratory, but at the farm and the fishermen, they actually can't afford it to buy all the cameras on laptops, install them, start to recording, and in the same time, with the time, you know the lenses covers mud and all the stuff. So you need to maintain it, and also you need again store data, sort it. So you need the person who will do it for them. So we are still waiting when it becomes even more cheaper, so it can be used. And of course, it exists some task when you need really powerful hardware. For example, you have 20 tanks, and in the same time you need to record individual fish from each tank and looking how they feel, is it ill or not. And in this case it's again needs the investment, and we are still trying to find more cheaper solution. So on this slide you can see list of useful and used materials. I really recommend the books of Deep Learning with the Python from creator of Keras and Keras. It's a library which used together with the TensorFlow framework. And if you want to dive in more structures of the model, just visit the Asimov Institute webpage. They did a good job, and of course for the fish it's written quite good reviews which are also available on the internet. And I would like to thank you for your attention, and if you have some question, just come to our institute and we will answer for all of them.